Welcome to another Dojo Talks. And today we're talking about philosophy in chess. Maybe even a little bit, is philosophy in chess even possible? I've been thinking about this question my whole life, but recently I read two books that kind of encouraged me to make this Dojo Talk. One was by Zaitsev, which I reviewed, called Attacking the Strong Point, basically a bunch of philosophical essays. And then let's call him the anti-philosopher, who we're going to have on this pod in a little bit, Willie Hendricks. He's famous for basically saying it's a bunch of baloney, all the stories you're telling yourself in chess. And it's captured in his first book called Move First, Think Later. Anyways, we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff. In my mind, and I will see what the other senseis have to say. In my mind, there's kind of three levels of chess philosophy. The first is a very basic question. It's a little bit navel gazing. And I would say it's all centered around the question of the Bronstein quote, chess is the art of thinking what chess is. And I'll have a little bit to say about that. Then the next I would say is about chess values. Now, this could be some deep stuff about what's going on in a position. Some people could just think of them as road signs, things to point your mind in a certain way. Others could see them as a little bit deeper than that. But they all have to do, the second level has to do with understanding the dynamics of certain positions and the stories we tell about them. And then finally, the third I'm calling deeper shit. Okay. And deeper shit would be stuff that's not just particular to one position. And I'll talk about that as well, what I think those three levels are. And so maybe I'll just throw it to the crowd here. Do we have other levels of chess philosophy we want to bring in? Or yeah, what do you guys think of the three levels?
I'm not yet sure what the difference is between the second and third level.
Okay.
Third level is new to me, so I would ask for further explanation of those two.
Okay. So most books on strategy, I think, help a player elucidate their chess values. Okay. And that would be like, what do you do in a certain position? How much do you value a bishop? How much do you value the initiative? And they all have to do with certain kinds of positions. So for example, with Nimzovich, nobody likes, but I think Nimzovich is central to this story because there's a lot of ways in which he is the chess philosopher. We have a phrase like the isolated queen pawn and his descendants. So the hanging pawns being related to the isolated queen pawn. So that's an example of a story of a dynamic that we can tell about a specific kind of position. He also goes deep on the French advance position, right? So these are stories and dynamics we talk about specific positions. Whereas the deeper shit is stuff that applies to all chess positions. So examples of that, I think, would be the idea of prophylaxis, another Nimzovichian idea. I think very deep, doesn't have to do with one position. The idea of, we can talk a little bit more about it, but of the outpost or the strong point. Nimzovich talks about overprotecting the strong point, and then kind of a reverse image of that is this whole idea that Zaitsev comes off with is attacking the strong point.
Right. Normally we'd have the concept of attacking your opponent at their weak point, right? Like normally you're supposed to find a weakness and then probe there.
Right. We get so I could talk more about what that
would be deep.
Yeah, that would be a deep concept.
The idea of like in general, look for a weakness and go after that.
Right. So for example, when we talk about specific positions and the guideposts that we have, that it's still philosophical because you're telling a story in words. And then with the deeper stuff, it's like if Zaitsev tells me to attack the strong point, that gives, and I want to take it seriously, that means in every position I need to think deeply about what the strong point is. It's not always obvious. It's not always obvious what the strong point is, right? But anyways, that's an example of deeper shit.
There's this setup in the Winnower where black's already played c5, c4, some winnower, and then
Mhm.
white thinks that black needs to play the move f6. So white plays bishop h3, attacking that pawn on e6, right?
Yeah.
Which is well defended by the pawn on f7. And then white plays like bishop f4 and rook e1.
Yeah.
And you're like, are we overprotecting e5, or are we attacking e6, or are we prophylaxis against like the only plan we think the opponent has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like a really cool thing. I've seen
Yeah.
I've seen the power of that idea of like
Yeah.
your opponent's freeing move is this one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you just say like that's not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll mention two more things. I came up with four things that are in the level of deeper shit. And that would be prophylaxis, this whole thing with the strong point outpost. And usually it's the blockading square, from my experience, at least with Zaitsev. Centralization, it's a very deep thing. And it's honestly harder to talk about than it sounds, I feel. And then also an idea I got from Kasparov, which I've used for decades, and that is the idea that chess is a three-dimensional game, right? So you have material, you have time, tempo, and you have quality of position. And that's a very powerful thing to me. It applies to everything, and it allows you to kind of assess any position, right? It's a tool. And it's a beautiful construct, too. Just the idea of like, oh, it's not just a bunch of pieces on the board. There's three dimensions happening here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm definitely a bit lost.
Okay.
The Kasparov thing I get that sounds philosophical.
Yeah.
All the other stuff you guys were talking about, that just sounds like general chess strategy. I have no idea what that has to do with like philosophy of chess or in chess.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think anytime you tell yourself a story, there's an element of philosophy to it. So what do I mean? Like, especially in today's engine age, if you turn on the computer, whatever story you told yourself is going to seem dumb. Or often it will seem dumb. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have a story. I feel like humans need stories. That's kind of like what we do. And a story might feel flimsy. It might feel not like very philosophical. It might feel just like a road sign to help guide the mind. But the idea of a philosophy of chess is to give you such a deep understanding of chess that you are able to approach any position. So it's like both an understanding and then also a practical weapon. Another example would be Silman. And Silman has, besides just the three dimensions, he has like a gazillion. He basically enumerates the quality of position stuff. So king safety and pawn structure, all these other things. But ultimately, and you could fight this, you could say this is not philosophical, but it's a philosophical framework to play the game. Same thing with my system and other books, even if other books only kind of hint at it, right?
So like the famous hypermodern philosophy, so to speak, was yes, you want to control the center, but it doesn't have to be by occupying it, right? So you can control the center without actually being in the center. Whereas before them, everybody understood controlling the center being the person who has the most stuff in the center.
Right.
So,
and also I just want to,
yeah, I think that's like an example of what Jesse's thinking of in terms of like philosophy on the board, which sounds very much like strategy.
And really, anytime, whether it's chess or otherwise, you start talking about values, then you're really in a philosophical realm. How much is the bishop worth? These kind of things. How much is the initiative? Does the initiative go up when we have opposite sides castling, for example? There's all kinds of things where we're telling ourselves a story that might not actually apply to the position at hand, but it's still part of our values in the back of our head.
Okay, so we're talking about like a deeper understanding of chess. So I think I kind of get what we're talking about. I wasn't sure if we're talking about like how to understand a chess or more about like how to approach chess. like a philosophical point of view. I think now I understand like a philosophical framework of how the game works. Because Silman definitely had a one that appeals to a lot of players. So like with his theory of imbalances, I think a lot of people can learn to approach the game in that way. Sure. Another one I remember now is was expressed by Grandmaster Sveshnikov. So I remember watching him do some commentary, and it was kind of funny. So he joined the commentary as a guest, I think. So I think he was a bit late, and it was a rapid tournament. So the games were already kind of reaching the climax, but he insisted that he and his commentator look at every single opening in each game to see how the action developed. Because for him, that was the only way to truly like understand what was going on in the live positions, by going through the opening and seeing like who played what and then what happened and then how did we get to the live point. And I always thought that was very fascinating, just the way like he had to kind of go through the opening to see the story of the game before he could understand the ending position. Right. And then also his approach to the opening, I think, was very I don't know, you could say dogmatic or something, but he strongly believed that the open Sicilian was incorrect from White's point of view because you're giving up an extra center pawn. And so he himself often played the c3 Sicilian so that he could play d4 and recapture with his own c pawn. So he had this like very like rigid understanding that he followed by like playing like the openings that he did. Like with Black, he always played Sicilian, and then with White, he would play like the c3 Sicilian.
He's like, my opponents will blunder into d4.
Exactly. And I mean, I feel like a lot of strong players actually can only get to a certain level if they have kind of similar viewpoints that they then express over the board. Like you kind of have to have a belief about certain positions being better than others. Otherwise, it's like it's very hard to play, I think, at a high level without having your own belief about like which positions are good and worth going into and so on.
Yeah, I think sometimes your beliefs power you and they limit you. So it's like an interesting thing, right? Because like you'll have an idea and there might be limits to that idea. You follow it, it might keep you from getting beyond a certain point, right? Like, as Jesse said, if you turn on supercomputers now, a lot of our ideas might look kind of wrong or silly at some point, right? Like this idea that you have to play the c3 Sicilian. I think if you looked at a supercomputer, it would say there's nothing wrong with playing the open Sicilian for White. I don't think there's some line for Black that refutes d4, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, of course, it's like
if you spend your whole life with a certain idea, it's going to power you up to a certain level, right? It's going to get you somewhere because you're believing in it, you're playing to it. It gives you like a framework and a kind of energy to defend your belief while you're playing, right? But it's also going to stop you somewhere. Excuse me, this is as far as that idea goes.
Yeah, I think it might. The interesting thing is that you'll see a lot of grandmasters play certain lines over and over again, even though the computer might say like that's not best, or there's like some known refutation, but they kind of keep playing the same systems because they just believe in the structures and they believe they can like outplay their opponents. And yeah, I don't know. That also might be limiting if they only play the same stuff over and over again. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of value in just having like your own understanding of how chess works and how a position works, and then being able to play it.
I think there's tons of value, but to me it is really like a double-edged sword because there are limits. So you might need to be able to switch and acquire new weapons somewhere along the way. Like it'll get you so far, but you might need something else at some point.
Yeah. Well, now of course there's also the new religion of the computer, and people just saying like whatever the computer thinks is correct always.
Yeah. Well, and I think in me and David's lifetimes with the development of the computer, what's really interesting is you think back to Fischer, and Fischer's opening repertoire wasn't based on like what he liked. It was based on what he thought was best.
Like he thought e4 was better than d4, truly?
Oh yeah, best by test. Best by test, my friend. Yeah. And later in his career he would sometimes play d4 just because his opponents were so souped up against him. But yeah, he believed in the openings, and that whole generation of players generally really believed in the openings they played.
I feel like he didn't really test D4 or C4
enough.
that much.
Enough. Played through other people's games. He looked at the data.
More just went with his first choice. No, but yeah, he was very kind of principled in his openings. He played the lines he thought was best, and he would repeat them kind of famously, despite, let's say, his opponents, having preparation. But okay, it was a different time. I mean, it's like, it's one thing to have to just rely on your analysis. It's another thing now to like deal with the computer and stuff.
One gets the sense that he actually thought white had an advantage, and like nowadays you might say E4, D4, C4, knight F3, whatever, it might all be equal, might be like a current perspective, right? So it doesn't make so much of a difference what you play, and you play like what you feel like or what matches you or something like that, right? But I get the sense like Fischer actually thought, like, with my repertoire, I can prove a certain small advantage for white, which is a very different feeling than we have today.
Quick time out here. Did you know that the dojo is an incredible site with tactics, a database, a community of people trying to improve, a training program? All of this is going on at our site. So go check it out. ChessDojo.club. Hit the link in the description.
Oh yeah, it's totally different time. These people believed in it. And one of the reasons when you look back on a lot of the older players, like even Capablanca, and Reddy talks about this as well, they were all playing the same opening again and again and again. And it got really boring looking, but they really believed that was the only way to play. So it created a situation where like, oh, we've got to change the game. This was 100 years ago because opening theory is crushing us, which is, in hindsight, kind of hilarious, but it stems from this belief, right? That there are chess values and there are ways to do things and there are correct ways to do things, and you don't mess with it. Whereas now, I think one of the problems of chess philosophy, one of the reasons I think a lot of players like Hendricks would be like, boss, come on, these are just dumb stories you're telling yourself. Get out of it. Maybe, it's sometimes interesting to the stories we tell, but his whole thing, by the way, is kind of interesting. He has a totally different perspective where he's like, when people start, I like this metaphor. He's like, when people came up and started building better and better boats, it's not the case that someone's had a deep thought about like, okay, I know how to make this boat better. No, it was people made a boat and then that boat sank. They did something else and they did something else until the boat worked. And then for chess, what he's trying to say is, people made a move first. And then it was only afterwards that some kind of story was put to it. Now, I disagree with this sentiment. However, it's the anti-philosophical approach because it's saying only the analysis is going to really matter. Nothing else is really going to matter. And then, of course, from that perspective, the computer is just completely right all of the time. So it's the death of philosophy.
There is some point to that in the sense that only the winner annotates the game in the end. And then they can just write whatever they want. Like once you won the game, you can annotate and come up with any story basically that makes sense, to kind of explain your victory. And
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people do that in books and stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay, I would say the interesting thing, like nowadays, I feel like the modern approach to like philosophy of chess is to kind of just treat it like a sport. Like, especially when thinking about like Magnus and how he approaches the game. To me, it very much feels like he and his team just treat it like a pure sport. Like they just try to maximize his chances to give him the best conditions. It's like, it's not about finding like truth over the chessboard. It's more just like, if he has better chances in rapid, then he's going to make a draw. Like that's his philosophy to chess.
Yeah.
Or if he thinks his opponent does worse in dynamic positions, he's going to play something dynamic. If he thinks his opponent does worse in endgames, he'll play for endgames. So it's like very, very different to someone like Kasparov, who I feel like Kasparov was like, his philosophy was very interesting because it seemed like he thought there was a natural truth to the game and he wanted to find the truth or get like as close to it as possible. Whereas Magnus is like, I'll play whatever that gives me the best chances to just win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think part of that also is people understanding more and more this thing that chess is a draw, right? Like that the margin of error is big enough for the top players, right? That they feel like it was weird because if they played a bunch of games against computers, they would find the margin for error is pretty tough to stay with it. But people just don't even play those games anymore. They've just completely given up on sparring with computers for the most part. And so 2700s playing with 2700s feel like, oh, there's so much room to still make a draw. And then that contributes to the idea that you're posing practical problems for your opponent as opposed to truly like approaching a truth that they've missed, right? Refuting their whole way of thinking and being.
Well, I think one thing the computers have shown us, and this is, you could call this philosophical, is this thing we thought back 30 years ago that chess was a draw is maybe on some objective level, it's a draw. But when two 2700s are playing, it's not a draw. They're making mistakes all the time. They were making mistakes they didn't know about. It's astonishing how much a computer will crush these players, not just with the black pieces, but with some kind of odds, dude. There's been GMs losing with night odds, dude. GM losing with night odds. Give you a break. It's incredible.
Yeah. I played a Blitz match with a computer engine at night odds. It's almost the only time I've played against a computer in the last, maybe it's been a decade or so.
Yeah.
When computers had just hit sort of master level, I sparred with them a lot for my openings and stuff, right? But yeah, I played this match at night odds and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
How the thing would be catching up and catching up and catching up the whole time. Just terrifying.
So I want to bring in the first level and just talk about that a little bit. So again, this is the Bronstein quote, which I think is amazing. Chess is the art of thinking what chess is. Magnus, you might want to do a little navel gazing to refine your inspiration here. Okay, I think there's a number of answers to this question, and I just want to go through the ones that make the most sense to me, and my friends here will add their own, I think. First of all, a lot of times when people ask that question, they're like, oh, that it's either like a science or an art or something like that. And that's fine. That's a fine answer. But what those answers don't do is they don't really explain why you keep coming back to the game.
Yeah. Sorry, just make clear, you're giving different answers to the question, what is chess? Right? Yeah. Okay.
So, for example, if you're a professional like Magnus who has to play for a living, then we know why you go back to the game. You have to do it. But just think about the vast majority of players who, like myself, find themselves coming back, or they try to quit. Ivanchuk tried to quit chess, but chess couldn't quit Chucky. It is impossible. So the interesting question there, like a beginning for me, is like, well, what is it about chess that's bringing these people back? And that's where I think you can kind of get into what is amazing or interesting about the game. All right, so here we go. Number one, I think chess is a fairness therapy. And what I mean by that is most of us feel that life is unfair. And we've been in some kind of situation where we maybe thought we were better than somebody else and they got it, whatever thing we were looking for, over us. And we see that all around us, not just with ourselves, but we just see a vast unfairness around us. And chess provides a situation, a lifestyle where we can experience fairness, right? Both the losing and the winning of it. Okay. Number two, I call this the glass bead therapy. So Hermann Hesse wrote an amazing novel called The Glass Bead Game. And there you have this amazing image of a game where you're playing with these glass beads, where you can talk about philosophy, life decisions, anything with the beads, and there's masters of the game. And what it is this thing, this idea that in our daily lives, we can make decisions, but we don't have authority over the future of those decisions. It's just so murky. Whether I decide to go for a run, or I talk to X, I talk to Y, I strive for Z, there's no clear sense of what's going to happen beyond that. It's kind of like swimming in the Pacific. It's just murky water. You can't see anything. So when I say chess is a glass bead therapy, it's this image of a art where we are able to do something where we can't see everything, but we're able to like see through future decisions, see what consequences of things might be. And I think that's one of the reasons, at least for me, that it's a beautiful thing that I don't experience in my daily life, right? I think most of us as well, we just don't know what's going on. And so chess provides this amazing situation where I can see. We had another podcast and we were talking about the physical board. And I was like, yeah, the physical board is this amazing tool where I'm able to like look into the future with visualization.
Okay. Let me make sure I understood that one, Jesse. It's my first time hearing that one.
Okay.
So I think the idea is in daily life, because everything is so complex, you don't get answers back on what you've done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you do a regimen of working out, you don't know for sure what the result of that regimen was, right? Okay, so you don't know like how much did it bring to me? What was it worth?
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like with the limit of the size of the board, first of all, compared to the world, you can look at the whole thing at once. Whereas very hard to look at your whole life at once, much less the lives of everybody intertwined with your lives, right? So if you do something nice for a friend of yours who lives in a different city, like how are you ever going to be seeing the consequence of your whole life? Exactly. So that's what the point is with the glass bead game. You can do something and you know the results of it.
Right. And you can see the future to a certain extent. The consequences.
So you can evaluate what you're doing. Now, people do try to do scientific studies in the real world and try to evaluate the result of X, Y, or Z, right?
Right. But on a personal level, it's on a day-to-day level, like these decisions we make, they're murky. They're murky, right?
So it makes me think also of the Polgar experiment, which is right. Can you make decisions that turn somebody into a genius, basically, right? Can you raise somebody to be a genius? They chose chess partly because of like the clearness of winning and losing and rating and title and all that, right? But they were trying to answer some murky questions about, the results in the real world.
But let's talk about that decision just as an example. So when you make a decision in life to get better at a fair game, such as chess, it's precisely the ability to escape what the real world daily decisions are, because there's going to be, like we said, there's going to be a fairness to chess, and you can see if you get better or not, right? Whereas in the real world, the chess world's different than the real world, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one thing I've always liked about chess is that it's very, very much merit based. And it's just like, if you work hard, you'll get better. And it's clear that the people that like train the most generally win the most. And it feels very fair. I mean, I do feel like when thinking about what chess is, I would say for me, it's like, it's a game, it's like, it's a board game, but it's it's the best one. It's the best one. I don't think I don't think we really have to try to compete with other like sports and stuff.
There's Go.
Sure. Yeah. I think chess is better. But like the reason, but like as a game, I would say the reason it is appealing is not so much because the game itself is so good, but rather because of the importance we've attached to it. I don't think we've all separately come to the conclusion that chess is like such a great experience. Like there probably are better games if we really went out there and researched, but like chess is the one that's just managed to make it and has a lot of like cultural importance. And it's very, I would say it's good enough. I would say it's good enough. Like it has some faults for sure.
So it's become the greatest game because of the society and culture and people around it. But you don't know for sure what game is the best game in the world or if it's the best game we could have possibly made.
Well, I'd say right now it's the best one because it's just like because of the meaning it has and the significance to it. And like so many people play it. Right. So it doesn't matter if some other game is better if only like a handful of people play it because it's just irrelevant. So, yeah. But that said, of course, obviously it gives all these elements of like satisfaction and like search for truth and this like fairness thing. And like Jesse was saying, it is nice that you get this certainty over the board that you don't get in other games like poker, for example, can feel, luck based.
Yeah,
sure. So you both feel it's fair that more talented people or people with better memories or et cetera, that they should win more often?
That's right.
Like Magnus wins more often than other people, but that's fair to you.
Who did you say wins?
Magnus wins more often than others, but that's fair to you. It's fair that he was born with like a better memory than any of us.
Yeah, I would say that's that's what's cool about competition. Everyone gets a fair start and may the best person win.
Okay. Best person, Magnus.
Okay, let me add a couple other ones. Just could throw them out there. So another answer that I think is interesting is basically an answer that you often get when you talk to mathematicians. So mathematicians will often try to say that at the root of everything is mathematics. So not just the computer and the ones and zeros, but actually the fabric of the world, the universe is actually mathematical and we're just discovering it. And so it's a clean world. It's a world where you're penetrating to the very nature of things. And I think a lot of chess players feel this intuitively that when they're participating in chess, which is a mathematical game at the end of the day, that it is approaching these pure forms that are somehow more real than the rest of the daily world. In the same way that mathematicians would like to believe that math is more real than the world of appearances. Controversial, but I think a lot of chess players, they kind of, when there's something beautiful, like a geometrical something going on, and they taste it and they're like, yeah, that's what it is. That's what's bringing me back to this game, right? So I think that mathematical sense is very important there. And I'm just going to list three more, and then we can talk about whatever. So I think you can think of it as a wellness practice. So like, I'm coming back to chess because it's keeping me sane. I'm coming back to chess because I don't want dementia. If I didn't have chess, I would lose my mind. If I didn't have chess, I'd be out drinking every night. I wouldn't take care of myself. So it's like a cruel mistress who's like forcing me to stay in line with my life. If I fell off the line, then chess would abuse me. She would make me lose all the time. Okay, another one. It's a little bit similar to what Kostya is saying about culture. I think this was more true when David and I were kids, but I would say it's an altar of the intellect. And so people look at chess players and they think, oh, this is obviously the smartest people ever, whether that's true or not, right? And back when David and I were kids, if like you were in 1800 and a master walked into a room, it was kind of like seeing a deity walk into the room. You just kind of bow down, and there was this incredible hierarchy in the chess world. And people talked about grandmasters in just godlike form. And to a certain extent, when, the media gets obsessed with our world championship, a lot of it has to do with the idea that this is showing who the smartest person is, whether you believe in that or not. And so in this view of things, the reason you are coming back to chess again and again is you want to prove your status as an intellectual or just somebody in the world. And you keep coming back to prove yourself because you want the status and admiration of others.
Did you know that the dojo is so much more than a podcast? We've got tactics, a database, a training plan for everybody, a community of people trying to get better. So come check us out, ChessDojo.club. Hit the link in the description.
Okay, finally, the most controversial one, but I think it kind of has a little bit of truth. And that is the one that Ruben Fine put forward, is that chess players are trying to kill their father when they're playing chess. It seems laughable, but I want to just say from my memory as an adolescent that, like all adolescents, there was a kind of anger and resentment about the people who had the power, who are the old people. The old people always have the power. And there was a kind of, there's a resentment there, and it's a fire. And whether it's to kill that generation or to kill your father, you're proving yourself in chess is, especially at that early adolescent stage, which most chess players went through, it does have something to do with this killing of the old, whether it's your father or, some other boomer generation, whatever it is, the thing above you. Okay, anyways, I'm sure there's more answers to the question of what chess is, but I wanted to just enumerate what I feel the ones that make at least a little bit intuitive sense to me.
Yeah, I don't really get that last one. But yeah.
So Jesse went like very, very deep immediately with all his answers, Kostya. Like the answers that I'm accustomed to are like chess is a sport, or chess is a game, or chess is an art, right? Isn't that the normal, like, or chess is a science, right? You can like analyze it and find the answers.
Yeah.
That's what people other than Jesse normally discuss with chess.
Well, and sometimes when people ask me, I'll say it's a martial art. That's my shorthand. That somebody asks me at a party, I'll say that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you told them that it was glass bead therapy, I mean, that would be a whole different direction.
Yeah.
I'd go with mind sport. I feel like mind sport is a good one because it kind of functions like a sport in the sense that there's a lot of like money and titles on the line and rankings and all that stuff, and people care about who's number one. But it's not like a physical sport like tennis, so I'd say like mind sport is kind of a fair label for it, just from, I don't know, marketing perspective.
Yeah. So Jesse immediately went super deep. When I was thinking about this, I didn't even go at all as deep as Jesse, but I'd gotten as far as this. Like, I've always thought that the answer to is it this, or that was yes, that it's all those things to different people, right? So one person approaches it as a sport, another approaches it as just a game, right? Another person approaches it as, maybe like they're just trying to paint, they're just trying to create some beautiful something or other, right? They're trying to create like a pawn checkmate or a smothered mate or something like that. So I always thought, like, basically it has the capacity to be all these different things for all these different people. And so I was thinking, so I had gotten to what Jesse was saying, where Jesse's things are answers to why do people come to chess, right? And so I was thinking like, oh, chess can be different things for different people. That's one of the reasons so many people play chess or come to chess in some way, right? Or, do puzzles, but don't play, right? Or follow chess news, but don't play anymore. Or, there's different ways to interact with the chess community now, right? Some people write code for chess websites, but don't even play, right? So, I kind of reached this question that Jesse was already way past on, but I had reached the question of what brings people to chess. Why do they keep coming back to chess, right? And I was thinking like, oh, people come back to chess for all these different reasons. And then I was thinking about chess compared to other activities. And I was thinking, there are probably other activities that people come to for multiple reasons. But the activity that attracts people for the most different reasons to some extent, right? Or for the most different common big reasons that satisfies the most important things for the greatest number of people. Those are going to be the activities that have the most people involved in them, right? So a game like chess, where somebody could, on the one hand, be pursuing the satisfaction of their ego, right? Just trying to prove that they're the better, smarter person than everybody else, right? Chess can have that person come to it, right? But you don't have to be an egomaniac to play chess, right? You could also be playing chess because you just like solving problems, and chess provides one problem after the next, and you just like solving problems, right? Or you just like having something to do while you sit in a coffee shop talking to your friend, right? So like chess can provide so many different things, and that's one of the reasons why it's so popular.
Yeah. Yeah, there's different kinds of players. There's like the real grinders, the tryhards.
Yeah.
And then there's just I'm just here to have fun types, which are very dangerous because they're also trying to win sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, winning can be fun.
And you got like the gamblers and yeah. Yeah, actually, I think that gets into differences between online chess and over the board chess, because over the board, these personalities really come out, and people sometimes get tricked, just based on like body language and emotions at the board. And so yeah, that's one thing that like the online crowd is not really going to be used to until they actually play tournaments.
Right, that dimension where people start reading each other's minds off of their body language, their posture, how long they're thinking.
Yeah.
Little feelings just kind of coming off of you somehow.
And just the extra tension of being there in person and competing against someone. Shaking their hand at the start, having to mark the result at the end. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I think, for example, all the reasons I listed for what chess is don't explain why there are millions of people right now all across the world binging on Blitz chess. And that is a kind of like, there it kind of looks like a video game. There's an adrenaline rush, and they drink a lot of coffee or something. They just keep going and going and going, and they can't stop.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing, which I've binged Blitz. It's kind of fun. But it doesn't have anything to do with explaining like what I'm doing there, man. Like that's more like, I guess you could call that escapism, in the same way I feel like a lot of this younger generation that I'm observing is escaping in video games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's no different than like playing Angry Birds on your phone or something. Like the Blitz escapism. It's basically just like a dopamine rush. It feels fun, play like quick moves, get some rating points.
And that's one of the things that chess is, right? It's one of the things it is, and that's one of the reasons why there's so many people who play it, right? Because it's providing these different things for different people.
Right, but even like the most like studious types, everyone enjoys a hardcore session of Blitz. So you can
I mean, every single chess player enjoys a long session of Blitz.
Most do. Yeah, at some point. Yeah. We'll want that like that adrenaline rush. So it can provide different things to different people at different times. It's very
at different times, I think, because I feel like even in my own life, like what I was getting out of chess has been different at different times in my own life, right? As I've changed somewhat as a person. There were times when I played lots of Blitz, right? When I was like 20. And right now, the risks of me playing Blitz until 6 a.m. and then regretting that I haven't slept and I have to handle the next day, the risk's like zero, right? It's just not going to happen anymore because I'm approaching chess for different reasons as a different person, but I'm still approaching chess, right? No matter how different David at 20 and David at 40 may have been. Those are two very different people attracted to chess, and spending lots of time on it.
Your party days are behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if I play Blitz now, I'm going to play Blitz for a different reason than I played Blitz before, right? So
yeah.
I used to long ago hate playing my friends and like playing people I disliked. What a change, right? Now I prefer to play with my friends, and I don't really want to play with people I don't like anymore.
I still don't like playing my friends. I feel like it's a lose-lose, unless it's in training. Training is sure, but in a tournament, it's a bummer. Lose-lose.
Yeah. Which shows that you're still playing chess for somewhat a different reason than I am, right?
Yeah. Yeah, possibly.
Coach is often conflicted about why he's playing.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Lately, though, my main reason to play has just been to produce good chess games. I just want to contribute to the ether.
Okay. So if you do produce a great chess game against me and I lose, what's the problem with that?
Oh, that's
why
that's
is that a lose-lose? Like, let's say
it's
play me, but you play a great game.
No, it's that's no problem. It's just, I'd also prefer to beat someone else.
So you want to produce a great game, but you also like there's someone out there who you'd rather beat.
Oh, I mean, you're a great player. Actually, it'd be nice to get more games against you. So, but in general, I don't love playing friends.
Like, I can tell you, I don't mind losing.
That's great.
I'll be totally okay with being on the other side of your beautiful game.
Actually, that's the drawback with being friends with strong players, is that, like, you don't get the same experience of facing them as you would if you didn't know them.
I mean, as you get better, there's already a smaller and smaller pool of people who are like really good opponents for you, right? Like, if you just walk into a normal chess club, I may be different where you are, Kostya, but like, if you lived in Berkeley and you just walked into a chess club, if you lived anywhere other than St. Louis, maybe, and you just walked into a chess club, there might be nobody who you're like really itching to play against. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, where you're like, oh man, I would love to play with that person.
Right.
But then if you're like, okay, and I don't want to play my friends, like I'm friends with every good player in the Bay Area at this point, probably, right? Like if I walked into a chess club and, Vinay and Andy were there and I was like, oh, they're my good friends, I don't want to play with, like, who am I going to play with anymore, right?
That's why you got to go to Europe. You got to go conquer a different part. Once you've championed your own town, then this is when you travel. You take on other people from other places.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good place to end it. And I feel like this is a thing we could come back to. There's a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about. Some months ago when Jesse first came up with this topic, I'm sure Kostya agrees with me. We didn't really know where it was going to be, and now I feel like we've only just opened it in a way.
Exactly.
And we talked about two things. I feel like we talked about how to understand chess and why people play chess. I would say it's like two different questions, but it was a good chat. Always good to reflect on this stuff.
All right.